Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Rebecca Adehill Show. Today I am sitting down with one of the most intelligent, driven, authentic, expansive, inspiring, most incredible woman that I have had the privilege to meet. We have only met in person 3 times as of today. And now I have the privilege to guide her as she is building her empire. Today we are going to sit down for my series, Voices of Impact, and we are just going to riff. We are going to have a really potent, activating conversation. So we don't quite know where this conversation is going to go, but we know it is going to be exactly what you need to hear. So with that said, I would love to welcome Riley May to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on. I think that's the best intro I've ever gotten to a podcast. So.
Well, I could keep going.
I'm honoured to be here and I'm excited for this conversation. I think, it's going to be a good one.
What a beautiful morning that we've had. Yeah. Maybe we just start there. We met up at 5:15 this morning and went for a beautiful morning walk, had a morning coffee. What an incredible start to the day.
Talked for a couple of hours. We got our sunrise that we were hoping for.
Yeah. All of the things. You know what I think is so interesting? We've only met in person 3 times. This time, 3 times?
Yeah, 3 times.
Right? The way we were chatting today, you would not think that it's only our 3rd time. Obviously, we have been in mentorship for quite some time now.
Yeah.
But our conversation was going.
Top tier yappers.
Top tier yappers.
Self-proclaimed, but top tier yappers.
And I just love that so much that I genuinely feel that you attract what you are. And I feel like you and I are just a match made in heaven.
We are. And I think for a long time, I knew that you were my person and I was like, I know I'm going to invest in Rebecca at some stage for mentorship, and I know she's someone that I really want to learn for. And I think for me, whenever I think about making an investment, especially if it's any sort of close proximity mentorship, I'm always thinking about who that person is and not necessarily what they do.
Yes.
And something I talk about all the time, even attracting, like attracts like, and you attract who you are. I always think to myself, and I talk about it inside programs and with clients, but you attract what you are and not what you want.
Yes, 100%.
And you have to lead with that in business. And when I watched you, and obviously we had connected almost a couple of years ago now.
Yeah, a couple of years ago.
Yeah, in a different experience, I knew you were someone that I really respected. I knew you were someone that shared the same values as me. And as I watched that progress, in your Instagram and in your business, you always became an obvious choice for me. And I think the way I invest, I always learn from myself. I'm like, okay, well, what contributed to me making an investment or me trusting someone?
Yes.
And then how can I emulate that in my brand and be the same for anyone investing in me?
Yeah, that is so beautiful. And I'm actually really curious here because it's something we actually started our conversation probably at the start of this year. And we're in October now. And, we've been working together only for a few weeks now. But what I think has been so beautiful about this whole process is the spaciousness and just allowing for, the right time to take place. And I think it's been so beautiful how we started the conversation at the beginning of the year and then now you just knew it was time. Take me through that process of how do you know when to make a move? What did that process look like for you? What does it feel like when you invest? What do you kind of look for? Talk me through your thought process in investing.
Yeah. So in January, I remember reaching out to you because I didn't have a business mentor at the time, and I was taking an intentional break from any form of mentorship in that way because, long story short, I was in a very inward season. I was going through a hard time personally, and I knew that I couldn't necessarily apply myself to my business the way I wanted to. And I also knew that based on what I was navigating in my personal life, I wasn't able to show up in the capacity I wanted to within mentorship.
Yes.
So that was a massive I guess, factor that I was considering when it came to investing. I knew that if I was going to work with you or any other mentor, I want to be all in.
Yes.
And I want to be all in the sense that I'm committed to doing what's required of me to get the result. And that's a really big thing as well. I think it's so important that you're in a space that you're willing and ready to take complete ownership and responsibility of the results you get within whatever mentorship program or experience you're investing in. And I knew at the time that I would be putting unfair pressure on you to pull me and drag me along because I was going through a hard season and that wasn't the relationship or dynamic I wanted.
That's an incredible self-awareness, and also allowing yourself to honor the season of life that you were in as well, to allow yourself to process, all of the things that you were processing, and just knowing, I guess, the frequency you wanted to invest from, and, even the energy you wanted to have stepping into a mentorship. And I think that's a beautiful level of self-awareness.
And the timing now, I knew the time would come. And I think that was my biggest thing. At the time I was moving to Bali, there was just a lot of movement in my life and a lot of movement personally. And I just knew the season wouldn't serve me, but I knew.
That is really interesting because I did not know. You know how you said, I've been watching you for quite some time, obviously.
Yeah.
But isn't that so interesting though, that you never know? Like I never knew that you knew that I was the one for you, right?
Yeah. And then with certainty, I knew that one day I would ask you for a link to pay in full and then I would just be in. And I did.
And I think that is so incredible. Like that just tells me that you never know who is watching, who is considering investing in your spaces right now, who is sitting right on the edge, ready to move. And I think there is so much potency of just having that knowing that you actually don't know who is watching.
No.
But you get to carry yourself with the assumption that there are currently people that are most likely considering both of us right now, and they are sitting right on the edge of investing. What would you say to someone who is sitting that right on the edge? Because I think there is a very fine line of people, investing pay in full, whether it's payment plan or pay in full, but that energy of I'm in, I'm ready to take it next level. What would you say would be an important aspect to even consider, or how do you move through that level of fear or those uncomfortable feelings showing up when you are to make that investment?
I think a really big thing from a self-awareness lens, and I always talk about emotional intelligence in business because I think without intelligence, you're always going to experience unnecessary resistance. I'm such a big believer in that. So for me, in my decision to invest in you, for an example, I knew that I wasn't not investing out of scarcity or fear. I wasn't investing because the timing genuinely wasn't right for me. And I think what tends to happen for a lot of people who are on the fence of doing anything, whether it just be executing something in their business, investing in mentorship, investing in outsourcing, it could apply to anything. They think that they're sitting in healthy contemplation, but they're not able to recognize when contemplation turns into procrastination.
Yes.
And you're actually avoiding
Mm-hmm.
the fear or the resistance or the discomfort associated with making that move. So for me, I knew I could make a really grounded decision in, okay, this isn't for me right now because I know that I need to honor this season that I'm in and navigate this on my own. But once I'm through it, with certainty, I'm making that decision. So I think the personal audit, whenever it comes to a decision that you're making, is, am I waiting out of fear, discomfort, or avoidance to whatever lies on the other side of making that decision? Or is this actually me sitting in really healthy contemplation, knowing that my time lies in 4 weeks, 2 months, 6 months, 12 months, whatever the thing may be.
Yeah,
but you have to know the difference.
Yeah, 100%. And how do you think, if people don't have that level of self-awareness yet, but they're like, oh, I really want to get to that point, what would be a really healthy kind of starting point for someone to even start to work on their own self-awareness? What energy am I sitting in? How do I lead? How do I move inside of my business? How do I invest?
Yeah.
Because something that I see a lot of is a lot of business owners, they take action based on their emotional state and how they are feeling, where I'm like, oh, you need to be able to move regardless and being more regulated, right? So I'm really curious to get your take on that as well.
I'm so big on this. It's
I know
the
you
basis
are.
of so much that I speak to. Golden rule in business, I think for female entrepreneurs, I lead with this so heavily myself, is you can never let your emotion override your intelligence. That is golden rule.
Amen.
Every single day of the week. Never let your emotion override your intelligence. And I don't mean that you can't ever lead emotionally at all. I think women are innately emotional, and that's okay. But you never want to make decisions from an emotional place, because I can almost guarantee you're going to regret whatever decision that you make that state.
Yeah.
So it's recognizing that and just knowing and trusting that you will make a decision when things are more neutral and it just is. And when you're in that state of it just is, you know you're going to make a decision that serves you, one that's not based on obligation. It's actually based on desire. And I think one thing that every single person in business, female entrepreneur, needs to be across in terms of self-awareness is their reactivity. You know, what are your go-to responses? Do you procrastinate? Do you dip into overwhelm? Do you easily get distracted? Are you shutting down often? Are you often blaming things external of you for why you can't do something or won't do something or can't take action? Like whatever it applies to. I know for me, a huge blind spot was always, I'm just a perfectionist.
Yeah.
Bullshit.
Yes.
Like perfectionism is a scapegoat for procrastination. It's like, you're not a perfectionist. You procrastinate. Okay, why do I procrastinate? 9 times out of 10, it's not because you don't have the strategy. No. It's not because you don't know what to do. It's not because you don't know how to like finalize that email or schedule that template or like whatever the thing is.
Yeah.
It's actually what you fear on the other side of doing the thing.
You know what came through for me as you said that? Because my perfectionist is loud, and for me, that is just a fear of judgment, of not being good enough.
And that's the self-awareness.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing for me as well. I always notice perfectionism for me is huge. And I go, I just value my aesthetic, or I just really, like it's all that I'm just like, okay, feeding myself excuses. But exactly that. I always know that really recently and in mentorship, you know this from my experience, huge blind spot was reflected around why I wasn't speaking to money so much and why I wasn't talking about certain things that were happening behind the scenes in my business, because I really feared ultimately being alone on the other side of not speaking to it. So I could either just say, oh, I just don't like to speak to it, and that can be what I present as. But really, if I get curious to why I'm avoiding sharing it, I fear being alone.
Definitely. Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. And also even on the topic of money, because that is a conversation you and I have had, and also probably something that will come up for your clients a lot, as they do for my clients as well. Like for me, the work I have personally done on my own money mindset, I used to be highly emotional when it came to like dealing with money, spending, receiving, like speaking about money, like highly uncomfortable. And I think what's been so beautiful in my journey is that, first of all, I avoided it at all cost. Didn't want to look at my bank account. Even when I went to spend, I was like, oh, I just avoided, full stop. Didn't want to talk about it. I shied away from the conversation. Like I did everything that I could not to speak about it. But what was so interesting about that all I really wanted was to feel more abundant and to be more abundant and not to have to worry about money. Yet I was spending all this time avoiding it. And I'm like, how can I possibly attract something I'm constantly ignoring, something that I cannot stand even speaking about? So for me, I just came to the realization that I really had to rip that Band-Aid. I'm like, I am committing to looking at my bank account every single day, regardless of like how bad it was. And I could feel like me getting that sick feeling in my stomach. Oh, this is not good enough. And then I had a bit of money coming in and I got excited. And then I felt down and I got like excited. Like it was just like an emotional roller coaster. And I'm like, this is not a safe energy. And I can really sense how my state would shift depending on my bank balance. And when I just kept looking at it, I could have 20 grand coming in, 20 grand going out. And I'm like, oh, I'm not feeling as much. Very, very neutral state. And then I got to the point where I could have an incredible amount coming in, an incredible amount going out. And I'm like, I'm neutral. That is kind of the moment where I knew like, I've mastered this. And I think that really shows in my ability to even receive now.
A neutral state will just breed successful business. And I think about it in every context, whether it's sales, whether it's clients coming or going, whether it's money coming in or out, whether it's your emotional state. If you can always come back to being in a neutral energy or state around anything, seeing nothing as good, bad, or indifferent, you're kind of unstoppable in business.
Absolutely.
And when you're in a neutral energy, you can detach.
Yes.
So you detach from the outcome, you detach from obligation, you detach from expectation that you place on different things. And for me around money too, I've been through such a journey. I remember 2019, I think it was, the end of 2019, I invested in my first mentor. No one in my life supported me, and not because they didn't love me, but because they loved me. They didn't support me. They were like, no, this is a silly investment. Who is this woman? Why are you paying her $6,000 for 6 months of mentorship? Like, it was all this stuff. And I was like, yeah, you're probably right. Like, who is she? And I don't know. I did it anyway. The best decision I ever made. And it's led to so much growth. But I remember at the time thinking, I'm going to die if I part with this $6,000. Like something terrible is going to happen with me. Like the somatic response in my body was so wild because I just didn't feel safe to spend money on anything other than, at the time, a house or an investment property. The thing that I knew I would get the most love, acceptance and validation for.
For family, yeah, that's huge.
And that's self-awareness, right? Knowing that you will never put yourself in a state consciously that is unsafe. So if you know that investing in something that isn't supported by the people you love most, for an example, that's threatening
so much to do with conditioning.
Yeah, you're loved or accepted, and instinctually we need to be loved and accepted. That's how we feel safe. So I think it's very similar to money. I know for me a massive shift that really helped was one, investing, because I realized, I woke up the next day and I'm actually okay.
Yeah.
I can still pay rent.
Absolutely.
I can still eat. I can still breathe. Nothing bad happened from me parting with money because I just held on to everything.
Yes.
I'm talking, I would earn $1,000 and I would put $950 away. Like so
good on you. Yeah. But
I was living at home, but it was like, and if mum was like, can you go and get this from the shops? I'm like, you want me to pay $30 for dinner tonight? Like, it would shock me that I'm like, you want me to pay for that? I can't spend $30. Like, so scarce. And then I pendulum swung. I got really good at spending. So there was also this like level of detachment that was unhealthy, where I was just paying for everyone and everything. And I came into a lot more money, and that also wasn't healthy. So I think now something I really think about is money, like any relationship in your life, but like an intimate relationship. If I think of the 5 love languages, physical touch, words of affirmation, acts of service, quality time, am I spending time with my money? How am I speaking to my money? How am I behaving around my money? How am I even spending my money? How am I serving my money? When I think of it like that, it shifts. How is my money serving me? How is my money spending time with me? And how can I shift my perception of that? And now, I feel like I'm in the healthiest place that I've been around money. And I've been through so many, I guess, just ebbs and flows in that relationship, like any relationship.
Yeah, for sure.
But I'm committed to strengthening that. And if I see it like a person, like a tangible person that I have to honor, respect, spend time with, speak nicely to, if I want that relationship to last and be healthy
and grow and flourish
then I'm curious around my language. I don't let myself behave poorly, treat it badly, or speak badly to it.
And I think this is actually an incredible point, because for instance, if we have both had experiences where we have invested and that did not go to plan, and I don't look back at that experience like even thinking that was a bad investment. Like if I could redo that, would I invest in that space again? No, I wouldn't. But I actually learned so much from that. And I think, but a lot of people, if they don't actually learn to extract the lessons from even like things that did not go to plan, I feel like it may actually hinder them from investing again because they have had a bad experience in the past. And and I think what's really important is like to create that separation, that like what you are doing moving forward, it doesn't necessarily mean that the last experience is going to repeat itself, right? And I think that has been such an incredible thing that I've personally navigated, that I'm like, every new experience, like for me, it's like I'm operating from such neutral state that I'm like, perhaps I'm taking some into consideration of the past, but like I'm allowing myself to have a new experience versus like feeding off the past. And I think that has also been a game changer in terms of how I move, how I think, how I take action, the size of my moves and, you know, my goals and how I lead, right? Simply because the way I'm thinking around fear, it's like fear to me is essentially a beautiful indication of me like reaching my threshold of expansion. So I still have those feelings come up. I still get nervous and I'm like, oh, that's an edge. But I'm like, thank you. Like, thank you for showing me like where my threshold is. I'm so ready to like move through this. And I know that the feelings that I have in my body is because the next path that I'm going, it's not the wrong path. It's not misaligned. It's simply unfamiliar.
Yeah. And to me, the path that is misaligned is the one that feels easy, is the one that feels comfortable. And the minute I shifted my perception of that, where I'm like, if I feel safe and comfortable, that is a path of limitation. And if I feel uncomfortable, uneasy, it's unknown and it's uncertain, amazing, that's where I'm going to experience the most growth. And the minute I shifted that, everything changes, because you go, okay, does that feel good? Yeah, it feels really safe. Okay, it's not for me, that's limiting. And it's such a simple shift, but it's like getting used to that discomfort, welcoming the discomfort and getting excited about it. Your body doesn't know the difference between nerves and excitement. Manipulate yourself. Like manipulate yourself.
Correct.
It's like, okay,
100%.
I'm scared shitless. This is terrifying. I don't know what the outcome's going to be. If you know the outcome, there's no growth in that. The purpose of life is to make progress, and action will always cure fear. So for me, I just think, well, if I'm afraid of doing this, it's probably a beautiful indication that I need to go and do the thing. I moved to Bali at the beginning of this year on my own as a 23-year-old going through it. But I thought, okay, that's a little bit scary. And I know that you've done something very, very similar.
Yes, yeah, moving
but
ahead,
you do
definitely.
it anyway.
Yeah.
And you just have to invite that in. And I think if you look at successful people, success being whatever, you know, you deem success to be, whether it be financial, materialistic, their freedom, how they feel, how they show up, whatever, there is a common theme. They execute a lot more than they talk. And that's the biggest thing.
Can we just go there? I am so big on this. Like, thank you for going there. And I think this is just, it's such an important conversation to have, because if people have incredible goals, like the way to get to them, I know this is going to sound very simple, like action. Minimize the gap between your thoughts and your actions and execute. No matter what. On your good days, on your bad days, execute. And I think if you don't know how to execute, it's probably lack of strategy or it's a lack of vision. But if you have that, if you have the vision, if you have the next step or the next 2, 3, 4, 5 steps, take them.
Yeah.
Stop thinking, start doing. Like, it's very, very simple, right? Where I feel like a lot of people, they struggle with that consistent growth because there is such a gap and such a huge space for overthinking, procrastination, self-doubt. There is, right?
Yeah. Well, it all just comes back to the underlying fears. And that's why I'm like, intelligence.
Yeah.
If you're not aware of what you're avoiding, you will stay stuck forever. How often do you hear that? Any service provider listening, which I know you probably are, you know that probably the most common thing your client says to you, no matter what industry or niche you're in, is I'm stuck. And that's the problem you're solving. Every single thing comes back to your mindset and comes back to the underlying fears and what we're ultimately avoiding. That is reactivity. We are always in reactivity when we're avoiding the discomfort associated with challenging who we think we need to be, who we innately are, but then what it means for us if we do the thing that's going to mean we're seen a different way, seen in a different light, or experiencing something outside of what we're conditioned to experience. So I remember at the time, for me, 100K a year felt like that's all I need. I don't need any more than that because my parents have earned, between X and X, and we've lived this life and this is a life I know. And if I earn that, then I get to live this life and that's comfortable. I don't need more than that. And I remember thinking, it's not about whether I need more. I just get to have more. But what does that mean about me if I have more? Well, I'm greedy and I'm obnoxious and I'm out of touch and I'm unrelatable. And people's perception of rich is, she's up herself or she's this or she's that.
Yeah.
So that was my fear. If I earn over X amount in my business, I was going to be seen as all of these things because that's been my experience. Okay, unconsciously, I will stop myself from doing, actioning, or being anything I have to be to reach that threshold. That's your glass ceiling 9 times out of 10. And something I always think about is like, I fucking refuse to have my mindset be my glass ceiling. I want it to be the fact that I don't have a funnel.
Yes.
I want it to be the fact that my sales page needs refinement. I want it to be that my link tree is not optimized. I want it to be that my marketing could be a bit stronger. It better not be my mindset.
Yeah. Right. But also, if it is your mindset, we are responsible and we have the control to move through that.
It's my favorite thing about it.
That excites me so much when people are like, oh, I can't do it, or like, I'm really scared, or like, whatever that be. I'm so congratulations. Like, I'm so happy for you because that means it's an easy fix. It may not feel easy, but like you are in full control right now of like getting yourself unstuck. And I think that is an incredible level of self-awareness to have when you get to that point. They're like taking that ownership, taking that responsibility for how you show up, how you lead, how you think, what you do and what you don't do, like the places you want to go, the goals you set. Like, I am responsible for all of it. Everything that I have, like every relationship in my life, the good and the bad and everything in between, like what I've created in my company, like it's all based on my decisions and the quality of my decisions. And I think I'm not necessarily scared of like getting it right every single time, because now it's like I'm willing to fall. I'm willing to give things a go, because now I'm not making it mean necessarily that people are going to judge me or people are going to talk shit about me if I'm not getting it perfect every single time. I called myself out on that story that was actually keeping me stuck. And the moment I set myself free from that, like, watch me go.
Your ability to do it anyway will determine the speed of your results. Just do it anyway. You're scared, do it anyway. You're in fear, do it anyway. You're in procrastination, do it anyway. You're confused, do it anyway. You don't know, do it anyway. Just do it anyway. I think people massively undermine, and specifically women, like, you can do hard things. You can do hard things. It's scary. Go. Trust that you've got yourself on the other side of doing the thing that you're afraid of or the thing that you're fearing most. I think it's something that, like you said, is so empowering to think, okay, there is so much fear associated with what's required of me right now. I know that. But action cue is fear. If I just do it anyway, right, and collect this much evidence that I'm actually safe to do the thing, I've dissolved that. So we can either sit and talk about it for 6 months. I'm available for that. Or just go and do it and plug back in tomorrow morning and let me know that you survived and you're good and now it's your new norm. That's it for me. And I even reflected on my clients the other day and I was like, oh, this is why I love the people that I work with.
For sure,
Because I noticed that I'm like, again, common theme, you attract what you are and not what you want. I know I take action and there's hardly never, and I'm in mentorship with you now, I'm not going to plug in with the same thing twice.
Correct.
Like I may, but I'm going to plug in with progress around that. So with my clients, I noticed that where it's like we make a plan. By the next morning, I'm watching Instagram stories. I'm plugged into Telegram. They've actioned.
Right. It's implementation. It's action. And it's like, and I think that is also a standard. Like if we are just taking like the 1% as an example, right? Like the standard inside of that space, like it's incredible because everybody, including myself, because that is how I lead, we take action, we make progress. And if we don't, we come back up again. And if you have like a few days where you are not feeling your best, I'm like, okay, perfect. What have you learned? Extract the lessons, keep on moving, get back up again. Let's go again. Like, we are not overthinking like every little downfall, every challenge. And I think that is also the speed in which we can learn and implement. I think that is an incredible trait and aspect to also lead yourself with, because if we are overthinking every challenge, every decision, that is ultimately going to slow us down and also start to instill a level of doubt as well.
Yeah, it's definitely something that I think about all the time. I'm so big on it in my business as well. And I'm big on it with myself. I know that we both share the trait, if you will, of being competitive.
Yes. Oh, yes.
I get competitive with myself where I have that, not inner critic, I would say that inner, almost like my inner boss, because when you are your own boss, it's like something's going to be keeping you accountable, where I'm like, Riley, not fucking good enough. Like, do it anyway, go regardless. And that voice like keeps me going, because if not that, then who? You know, and if not me, then who?
Yes.
So I have to be the one sometimes to come in with a level of tough love where I'm not always over-validating myself and over-validating my experience and going, I know it's hard, like, give yourself a rest today. No. Like, no. Of course we're intuitive and we listen to ourselves and we honor how we're feeling in all moving parts. I was going to say,
like, it's not that you are pro, like, burnout, like driving yourself to the ground. It's not what it is about.
It's the little action.
For sure.
So if I go, oh, a podcast scares me, perfect. Get in the car, drive, and then press record, and let's make it happen. It's that. Just do it anyway. And that's the voice that I'm talking about, where it's like getting so good at calling yourself out on where you are getting in the way of your own potential.
Yes.
You just have to be able to see it. And
what could be like a first step that you start with there? Like, what could be, if I know, or I'm just, because sometimes I feel if people don't have that level of self-awareness yet, you know, when they're like in the problem and they don't yet have the ability to like zoom out and actually observe what's happening. And I think sometimes we almost become a little bit too like self-aware, where we are like, okay, what's this? Is this like, you know,
everything 7 layers deep?
Right, everything. Not everything has to be 7 layers deep, but if you are wanting to strengthen your level of self-awareness and you are kind of so close in the problem that you are actually not really seeing what's happening for you in this moment, you just know that you are not where you want to be yet. What would be like a first step to like even take some of that responsibility to deepen your self-awareness?
I think a massive thing is understanding and recognizing that the problem you're experiencing right now probably isn't the result of anything external of you, and that can be hard to see. So it's understanding that you are probably the problem you're experiencing. And the minute you have that awareness and it's like, oh, okay, I'm probably contributing to every problem that I face in my life, you can start to get curious around the situations. Okay, I don't like my career. This is a problem. What about this am I not enjoying? How am I contributing to this problem? Okay, my relationship is suffering, or there's not open communication, whatever the thing is. Okay, where am I contributing to the problem? And if you can start getting curious around that, it's going to give you insight to where your quote unquote work lies. And a level of self-development work that I think everyone needs to do is self-concept work. Like, who do you think you have to be? Because if you don't understand who you think you have to be, and I say think because that is conditioning, it's just who you think you have to be.
Yeah.
You don't know why all of these fears come up, and you don't really know what you're not allowing yourself to either do, be, or express. And that's the biggest thing. So I think
I'm curious about that. Yeah.
Judgment's a big one.
Huge.
I don't think anyone in the world, let alone being female, entrepreneur in the online space, showing up online, doesn't fear judgment or hasn't navigated fearing judgment. When you understand judgment and you understand why you fear judgment, you dissolve it because you never really fear judgment from other people. You only ever fear your own.
Yeah.
Every single time. If you're casting judgment, you fear it. It's in your conscious awareness to even consider that someone would be judging you for the thing. And often you judge someone because you're triggered by something they allow themselves to do, be, or express. So if you're on your social media and you're super convicted, and I'm scrolling my phone and I'm watching Rebecca and I'm like, you're loud and you're confident and you say what you want and you speak your truth and you're always sharing your opinion and you trigger the fuck out of me. Like if I'm sitting there thinking, Rebecca just triggers me so much. Okay, that's a mirror. What about her behavior or who she is triggers me? Okay, she's really loud, for an example. She's really expressive and she also always shares her opinion. Interesting. I don't share my opinion. I don't think I can be loud. I don't think I'm safe to express myself in that way. Okay, so either I'm going to make Rebecca wrong or I'm going to get curious around why I don't let myself be loud, expressive, or opinionated. Where did I learn that those traits were wrong or bad? Because you'll be able to look back and go, I remember my mum used to tell me that every time I had an opinion, I had to be quiet and shut up and just sit down because your opinion's not welcome. You're younger. You're not old enough. You're not this. It's not valid. Okay, cool. I learned that at 6. I've adopted that belief. I've carried it my entire life. No wonder I'm 20 something and I don't feel like I can have an opinion.
Yeah.
And no wonder Rebecca triggers me, right? Because she's a huge mirror for me in that. If you can then dissolve that judgment by integrating that part, the judgment no longer exists and nor does the fear.
Right. And knowing that that's not yours to own even, right? Right. And I had a perfect example of that, of even a potential client. She had spent probably about 2 years judging me. I had no idea. I thought things were great. Right. And she was we had met briefly. We've had a few interactions and I'm like, she's a lovely girl. That was it. And then, we didn't cross paths for another couple of years. And then one day I see that she signed up to one of my programs. And I'm like, okay, wow, this is really interesting. And I open Instagram and I've got a DM and there's 4 voice notes. And I'm like, what is this about? And I start to listen and it just starts with an apology of just saying sorry. And I'm like thinking, sorry for what? She was like, I am coming in here to own my judgments that I've made about you and how I have made you wrong for simply being you over the past couple of years. You have triggered the fuck out of me. I have talked shit about you and I have created stories in my mind that what you have created is, X, Y, and Z. And simply because I did not want to take ownership of where I was at. And she goes, I've got 1 kid. She's like, you have 3 kids and I can barely keep up with 1. You are keeping up with 3 and have all of those things. And she was like, I just could not take that responsibility. And then, I stopped drinking and, she was drinking at the time. It was just a lot of things, but it was so beautiful because that was actually my biggest fear of people talking shit about me not knowing and me not being liked and just having this judgment happening, right? So in that moment, I knew that I had mastered that because I could actually see, or first of all, I knew that was not mine to own, that was hers. And I could actually see beyond that. And she'd come into a client. She then went to, become one of my private clients. And, it was just incredible. And we had the most beautiful relationship. But I think it was so beautiful and big on her end to be able to own that. And also it was important for her to drop in and actually not just own it for herself, but own it to me. And then choosing to lean in for mentorship.
Yeah. Dissolving it regardless. That's a huge testament to you as well for being such a safe person for people to come to. Someone would never come to you unless you were a safe person to voice that to, and her knowing that you'll be able to hold that. Because a lot of people couldn't hold that.
Yeah.
And it's cool to even witness your own growth in that. I know for me, I've always got type forms of how did you find me or why did you invest in me and different things like that for clients, either pre or post any type of mentorship or experiences together. And there's one specific form that I have, and there's one section where there are multiple, you triggered me, you triggered me, you triggered me, you triggered me. And it's so funny because we would never wake up with the intention of, I'm going to trigger someone today.
No.
And no one wakes up with that intention. But through being someone who takes action, pursues success, goes after their goals, is confident, is committed to doing X, Y, and Z, naturally in that you're going to trigger people. So talking about money, you know you're going to trigger people. You know, sharing your business online, you know you're going to trigger people. Talking about mindset, growth, all these different things. That is very triggering for someone who's sitting in a position right now where they feel stuck. Their relationship with money isn't great. They're struggling in their personal life. They're not in a great, you know, space in terms of their mindset. Of course, that's going to be triggering, but it's an invitation.
I was just about to say that, because I feel like any business owner, service provider, coach, mentor, if they don't show up to the best of their ability, I feel like they are doing their clients or potential clients a huge disservice. Like, I'm always thinking, like, be the light that they seek. How do I want to retell this story? Like, how do I want to plug back into mentorship to my clients and explain to them how I navigated a certain situation or how big I allow myself to play? So I feel like if I am not like genuinely leaning in and taking responsibility and like going after for what I want for my life, how can I tell my clients to do that?
Yeah.
Like, that integral part for me is massive. And I think that is something that you can't just say. You need to show it by taking action.
And you have to be it. It's embodiment. I say it all the time and I really believe this. Embodiment will always trump strategy when it comes to attraction, conversion, and retention inside of your business.
Yeah.
Every single day of the week. I know for me, at the beginning of this year when, you know, I was going through my breakup after, you know, leaving my partner of 9 years, and that was a huge identity shift for me, just a crisis. Like, I was just going through it. But I remember I would look in the mirror, and I was doing a lot of mirror work at the time and just processing and all moving parts. And I would say to myself, you are going to respond to this situation. You are not going to react to the situation because you are the embodiment of your work. And so much of what I teach is emotional intelligence, reactivity, concept of self, identity work, intelligence over emotion. And I remember just thinking, are you going to access your intelligence now or are you not?
That must have been quite challenging at times, especially when your emotions are heightened, right? No doubt that was not an easy ride, right?
And it wasn't for probably 6 to 9 months. And I actually had a conversation with my sister about it the other day because she was in my mindset program this year.
Oh, beautiful.
So she was kind of seeing me teach in real time and going on that journey with me. And she said to me, do you ever feel like there is just so much pressure for you to do the right thing because of what you teach and because
I'm curious
of
about
what you stand for? And I said, absolutely, there's pressure, but I don't see that pressure as a wrong, bad or negative thing. I actually see it as a really beautiful invitation to be in integrity and strengthen that part of myself. There were so many times where I wanted to react. Of course.
100%.
Like, I'm human. Of course, that doesn't disappear just because you have self-awareness, but the self-awareness allows you to see where you want to repeat a pattern, where you want to react, where you want to do something that you know is not going to serve you, but it will soothe you in the moment. And that's really challenging because when you're in that place, I often wanted to soothe myself because it would help me get through the hour, the day, the week, the experience or the feeling. But I was like, I can't.
No.
I teach the opposite of this. Who am I to speak to these things, sell these things, whatever it may be, if I'm not it? So for me, even if I'm not talking about it ever on the scenes, who I am behind the scenes to me from an integrity lens matters so much. Like, I can't sleep at night if I'm not doing what I say that I'm doing.
I think that is often what leads to burnout because it will be such a disconnect of what you say you are versus the person that you actually are.
Imposter syndrome even in that.
Oh, definitely, right? But then I also believe in like duality, for instance. Like, both you and I, we have navigated like, you know, different, hardship personally. But I think I also believe in duality, that the highs and in terms of like in which we're moving inside of our businesses and continuously taking action and moving and showing up to our companies, we get to do that whilst navigating like a really tough season personally.
I invested in you because of this. So I would say a huge reason that I knew you were going to be someone that I wanted to invest in, wanted to learn from, wanted to be supported by, all moving parts, was exactly that. I'm like, she's walking the path and I know she's navigating things and I'm watching how she shows up, and that's my mentor.
Yeah.
And I'm committed to being that for my clients. You know, I know what it's like to be at just rock fucking bottom, but you show up anyway.
Yeah.
And
is that easy? No, it's fucking not. Like I
there's
say this
nothing
all the
easy
time.
about it.
It's like we're still like very much in, you know, the thick of what we are experiencing and the heaviness and the heartache and the pain of that. But I think what's so beautiful is that I get to show up. I get to keep moving inside of my business. And that is not to say that I'm avoiding what's happening in my personal life and the grief that we are currently navigating. I get to sit in that every single day. I get to talk about that every single day. But that does not mean that I need to let everything in my life go. And I know that has been a huge permission slip for a lot of people watching on, whether they're my clients or not. But I think life does not have to be perfect in order for us to take action. And when we are learning to embrace that just duality of life, or allowing life to be life and not just waiting for it to be perfect in order for me to take action, like you know where I'm going here, because that has genuinely like changed my life. And also I'm more compassionate towards myself, because I'm allowing myself to feel whatever the fuck I want to feel, whatever I'm going through, whatever I'm navigating. I'm allowing those emotions, because I don't need to be excited to show up in my business. I don't depend on motivation to lead me. Like, I get to move regardless, whilst I am honoring every fucking emotion under the sun.
Yeah.
The highs and the lows and everything in between.
There's so much to
You're
be
like
said.
sitting on the edge of your seat. You're like, where do I start?
But also stop for words, because I'm like, there's just so much to that. This year has taught me actual resilience and has tested tolerance to duality. Like, can it just be okay that I'm having the worst time personally, but I'm still experiencing success in my business, and I'm not going to make that right, wrong, or indifferent. It just is, and that's okay. And it's not that you're not in integrity for sharing it. This is, again, coming back to emotional intelligence. I'm going to respond and not react. I will share my experience. I will extract the lesson once I have extracted the lesson, not when I'm in it. And it's not to say that you can't bring people with you in what you're navigating, because you absolutely can. But no, I'm not going to get on my stories crying. And no, I'm not going to share what I'm navigating in real time every single point in my week or day.
Yeah.
Because that's not supporting the business I'm building. But absolutely, I'm going to bring you with me in that. And my clients are going to know what's moving in my world. And I'm an open book within any of my paid spaces. And that's always sort of the way that I choose to lead myself. But even some of my clients were like, I had no idea. Like the extent of it. And I was like, I know, but I had a job to do, and I was so committed to doing that, and I can do that.
Yeah, so I'm curious about that, because what a lot of people have asked me, they're like, how do you do it? Like, how can you possibly wake up and go to work? Like, how do you actually do it? Well, first of all, I have no choice. I've got a company to run. I've got responsibilities. I've got like bills got to be paid. I have no choice. Like, that is the bottom line.
Got wages to pay.
Right. But beyond that, how do you do it?
For me, and this is something we spoke about on our walk this morning, I was always somebody up until, this point where I would make even crying like one tear very wrong. Like, I would cry once, even by myself, and I'd be like, stop being weak, stop being this, like, get on with it. You can't crumble, you can't be weak. Weak was such a word for me. This just forced me to like the absolute depth of it. I didn't have a choice almost. What I was feeling and experiencing just sent me into such a spiral that all I could do was sit in it, but it was the most productive thing that I could do. So I got really good at allowing myself to have an actual process, not park it or suppress it, because it was inconvenient. I could be sitting in the middle of a cafe because I was, in Bali for a period of this. It could be 11 o'clock on a Tuesday and I would break down. And I would just sit in the middle of a cafe and cry.
Yeah.
And I would just cry. And then an hour later, I'd probably be okay again and I would just be on my scooter and I'd be going back to my villa.
Yeah.
But
I really love that because you are not making it mean anything else than you just sitting in whatever you are navigating.
Yeah.
Like you can just allow yourself to have that experience. It's like I can go home and I can have a cry with my husband tonight and we can be really sad. And then we get to feed the kids and put them to bed and we get to wake up. We get to have another cry in the morning and I get to go to work.
Yeah. And then during work, if I'm sitting at my desk and it comes over me, I'm going to cry again.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to wipe my tear and make a coffee and then I'm going to do that sales page.
Yes.
And then if I'm sad again on the way home, I'm going to cry again. And I just got really good at just allowing myself to honestly just cry as much or as little, even being angry as much or as little as I needed to. And I never made it wrong. And what I would also say to myself, if I was having a day that was really heavy or even a week or, couple week period, after a point where I thought I should be over it or I should feel this way and the expectations around it, I would just say to myself, you're not going backwards. It's just a heavy grief day.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's just a heavy grief day.
Yes.
And it's a moment and it sucks and it's all encompassing and my whole body feels a certain way. And maybe I was dissociated for 3-4 months. Like maybe I was now that I reflect back.
Yeah.
But it's all perfect and it's all fine and I will never make myself having a process wrong ever again in my life.